The phone sat on the polished mahogany coffee table like a dormant explosive. Elias watched it with a grim, unwavering intensity. He didn't touch it. He hadn't touched it for 3 agonizing hours. The screen remained black, a void in the dim, amber light of the living room. The house was too quiet. The HVAC system hummed in the background, a monotonous drone that seemed to highlight the absence of human sound. Juliana had been gone for 4 long days. It was a weekend trip to the coast with her friends from college. Simple, easy, much needed, she had said. That was the narrative they had both agreed upon over dinner a week ago. But the communication had died a sudden death on Friday night. A single text arrived at 7:02 p.m. Checking in, having fun, phone dying. Then, the void. Saturday passed in a blur of forced, hollow distractions. He mowed the lawn until the lines were perfect. He cleaned the gutters of every stray leaf. He checked the weather in Seaport every 20 minutes. It was sunny there. The sky was a perfect, taunting blue. By Sunday evening, the silence wasn't just quiet. It was a heavy, physical presence. He sent a message at 6 p.m. "Home soon? I've got dinner ready." No response. He sent another at 9 p.m. "Getting worried now, Jules. Let me know you're safe." The blue bubble sat there, a tiny icon of indifference. He called twice. It went straight to a generic voicemail. The mailbox was full. He paced the hallway of their Crestview home, his socks sliding on the hardwood. Every creak of the floorboard sounded like a judgment on his growing anxiety. He imagined the worst: a hydroplaning car, a hospital waiting room. But deep down, a darker, sharper intuition was clawing at his throat. The silence felt crafted. It felt like a wall being built, brick by heavy brick, while he sat on the wrong side. He looked at their wedding photo on the mantel. They looked so certain of the world. Now he felt like he was drowning in a vast ocean of maybe. The digital clock on the microwave shifted with a silent click. It was 2:13 a.m. The silence of the suburbs was absolute, broken only by the distant, lonely bark of a neighbor's dog. Then, a low, guttural rumble. Tires crunched on the gravel driveway. Headlights swept across the living room wall, casting long, skeletal shadows of the furniture. He didn't move an inch. He stayed in the armchair, his body shrouded in the deep shadows. The engine cut out, the cooling metal ticking in the night air. A car door slammed, far too loud for the hour, far too final. A key fumbled against the brass lock. The front door swung open, bringing with it a gust of cool, salt-tinged night air. Juliana stepped inside, her breathing heavy. She didn't see him at first. She kicked off her heels, and one of them hit the baseboard with a dull thud. She sighed, a long, ragged sound of exhaustion, or perhaps relief. She looked disheveled in the dim light. Her hair, usually a disciplined wave of chestnut, was frizzy and tangled at the ends. She smelled like cedar wood, expensive gin, and something metallic. She reached for the light switch. "Don't," Elias said, his voice cutting through the dark. She gasped, her hand flying to her throat in a jerky, reflexive motion. "Jesus, Elias, you scared the hell out of me sitting there like a ghost." She stayed pinned by the door, her silhouette framed by the yellow glow of the porch light. "Where have you been?" he asked. His voice was a low, steady rasp. "I'm home, aren't I?" she said, her voice instantly hardening into a weapon. "What's with the midnight interrogation?" "It's 2 a.m, Jules. You haven't answered a single text in 48 hours. She walked past him toward the kitchen, intentionally avoiding his gaze. "My phone died. I told you it was dying on Friday." "And it stayed dead for 2 whole days? In 2024? We didn't have a charger that worked with the outlet in that old cabin. Stop being so dramatic." She opened the fridge, the light spilling across the floor like a wound. She grabbed a bottle of sparkling water. Her movements were jerky, frantic, and entirely too fast. She was hiding something in her motion. He rose from the chair and followed her into the kitchen. The fluorescent light overhead hummed with an annoying, high-pitched buzz. "I wasn't being dramatic, Juliana. I was worried you were dead." She spun around, slamming the glass bottle onto the granite counter. "Oh, please, you weren't worried. You were just waiting." "Waiting for what?" "Waiting for me to fail. Waiting to pounce on me the second I walked in." The shift in the room was dizzying and violent. He had spent 2 days in a state of genuine, heart-pounding panic. Now, through her words, he was the villain of the story. "I stayed up because I love you and I didn't know where you were," he said. "You stayed up because you wanted to control the narrative," she countered. Her eyes were bright, defensive, and entirely cold. She didn't ask how he was. She didn't apologize for the silence. She was building a fortress of righteous indignation. "I'm a 30-year-old woman, Elias. I went away for a weekend. I don't need a curfew." "This isn't about a curfew. It's about basic respect. It's about a simple text." "I was busy living my life. I didn't think I had to report to a commanding officer." She moved to brush past him, her shoulder hitting his. In the light, he saw a small dark smudge on the collar of her cream sweater. It looked like a thumbprint of ash. He didn't point it out. He felt a sickening, hollow drop in the center of his stomach. The woman standing in the kitchen felt like a stranger wearing a mask. The anger in her voice was a shield. He understood that now. People only get that angry when they are trying to drown out their own guilt. Elias took a slow, deep breath, feeling the air fill his lungs. He felt the heat of a retort rising in his throat. He wanted to scream about the receipt he knew he'd find. He wanted to demand she unlock her phone right then and there. Instead, he sat down at the small kitchen table. He lowered his voice until it was barely a whisper, forcing her to lean in. "Okay," he said. Juliana stopped her frantic movement toward the stairs. "Okay, what?" "Okay, you're home. You're safe. That's all that matters right now." He let the silence return, but this time he steered it. He didn't ask another question. He didn't argue against her wild accusations of him being controlling. He just watched her with a calm, steady intensity. It was the terrifying power of the silent observer. She began to fidget with the cap of her water bottle. She took a sip, then another. She looked at the clock on the stove. She looked at her chipped nail polish. Without the friction of his anger to feed her defense, her posture began to wilt. She looked small and tired under the unforgiving kitchen lights. "I'm going to bed," she finally said, though the bite was gone from her tone. "I'll be here for a while," he replied softly. He watched her walk up the stairs, her footsteps heavy and slow. He didn't follow her to their bed. He stayed at the table for over an hour, listening to the house settle. The silence was no longer empty. It was heavy with the weight of things unsaid. By staying calm, he had forced the ugly truth into the room. The truth was that she had no real excuse for the missing days. The truth was that she was relieved he had stopped pushing for the facts. And that relief was the most damning evidence he had ever encountered. The next 3 days were a masterclass in atmospheric pressure. They moved through the house like two ghosts haunting the same hallways. They spoke only in logistical, cold shorthand. "The mail is on the counter. I'm going to the gym. We need more coffee filters." The trust between them wasn't just broken, it was ground into dust. Every time her phone chimed, she turned her entire body away to read it. Every time he entered a room, she seemed to be clicking out of a screen. He felt a profound, aching sense of mourning. He was grieving for a marriage that was still physically present, but spiritually dead. The distance between them on the sofa felt like 1,000 miles of frozen tundra. He tried one last time on Wednesday night, desperate for a spark of the old Juliana. "Jules, can we just talk? Really talk?" She didn't even look up from her laptop screen. "About what, Elias? I told you everything. It was a trip. I stayed out late. I'm sorry." She repeated the words like a scripted play. It was a dead, hollow thing. The intimacy they once shared was now a flickering ghost. He realized then that trust isn't a grand, single event. It is a million small, consistent choices made every single day. And she had stopped choosing him a long time ago. He looked at the woman he had promised to protect and honor. He saw the subtle lies etched in the tension around her eyes. He saw the way she guarded her secrets like stolen jewels. The emotional distance was no longer a gap. It was a canyon. He was exhausted from trying to build a bridge across it by himself. He was finished with the silence. On Thursday morning, Elias woke up long before the sun touched the trees. He didn't feel the burning anger anymore. The fire had gone out, leaving behind a cold, crystalline clarity. He watched the pale gray light of dawn creep across the bedroom ceiling. He listened to Juliana's steady, rhythmic breathing beside him. She was sleeping the deep sleep of someone who believed she had won the standoff. He got out of bed with practiced, silent movements. He didn't go to the kitchen to start the coffee. Instead, he went to the spare bedroom and pulled a suitcase from the back of the closet. He packed with a deliberate, slow precision. 3 of his best suits, 5 ironed shirts, his laptop and all the charging cables, his passport from the desk drawer. He didn't take everything he owned. He didn't want the drama of a cleared-out house. He just wanted the freedom of a definitive choice. He carried the heavy bag down to his car in the pre-dawn chill. The air smelled of damp earth and the promise of a storm. He went back inside the house one final time. He sat at the kitchen table and wrote a short note on a piece of yellow legal pad. It wasn't a long letter. It wasn't a list of her failures or a manifesto of his broken heart. "I can't live in the silence you've created here," he wrote in steady script. "I deserve a partner who values the truth more than they value their own pride. Goodbye." He placed his gold wedding ring directly on top of the note. It looked startlingly small and lonely on the vast, dark expanse of the granite. He looked around the kitchen one last time. This was the place where they had toasted to their first mortgage. This was the place where they had laughed until they cried over burnt dinners. It was just a room now, filled with shadows and expensive appliances. He walked out the front door and pulled it shut with a firm, quiet click. He didn't look back at the upstairs windows. He didn't wait to see if the light in the bedroom would flick on. He got into his car and turned the key. The engine purred to life, a steady sound in the morning air. As he backed slowly out of the driveway, he felt a massive weight lift from his chest. It was the crushing weight of a dying hope. He drove toward the main highway, leaving the quiet streets of Crestview behind. The sun was finally breaking over the line of trees, casting a golden light over the road ahead. The sky was a pale, bruising shade of violet and gold. For the first time in years, the silence didn't feel heavy. It felt like a wide-open road. It felt like a chance to breathe. He turned onto the interstate, the car accelerating smoothly. The city lay ahead, filled with possibilities and the chance to start over. He didn't know where he was going to stay tonight, but for the first time in a very long time, he felt entirely safe. He felt like himself again. The road stretched out before him, clear and certain, leading him away from the ghosts of Crestview. He watched the speedometer climb as the town fell away into the rearview mirror. He was free.